One of the wealthiest people in the world was Jean Paul Getty, thanks to being a big oil tycoon. But his fame was not created so much by his fortune, but by his excessive greed, which led to him to be the bearer of the title of most stingy man in the world. He was born in the United States in the year 1892, in the state of Minnesota. First, he became famous for having surpassed the net worth of $1 billion, a feat that very few had achieved in the 20th century. At that time, he formed an oil empire called Getty Oil, which grew by leaps and bounds. The Guinness Book granted him an award for being the richest private citizen in the world. At the time of his death, his assets exceeded $3 billion. He was a connoisseur of music and painting, so he often bought works of great value. But what those who knew him highlighted the most about him, is that he was an extremely stingy man. One day, when he realized that any of his employees could use the phone in his exorbitant mansion, he had payphones installed, thus keeping calls from being free. But the summit of the highs was when they kidnapped his grandson, named Jean Paul Getty III. This happened in Italy in 1973. At that time, the criminals sent a note to his family, indicating that the young man was abducted and that if they wanted to see him alive again, they should pay the sum of $17 million. And the first thing to cross the old multimillionaire's mind was that his grandson had kidnapped himself to get the money. But before long, the criminals showed up, proving that they were not fooling around. They sent an envelope containing a tuft of the lad's hair, along with one of his ears, to an important media outlet. But even after seeing such a terrifying and painful scene, old Getty still refused to pay the ransom. On the contrary, he stated that if he agreed to give them the amount they demanded, then they would do the same with their other 13 grandchildren. But the kidnappers weren't up for nonsense, and warned that if he didn't pay the sum, the next week they would send the other ear, and afterwards, they would kill him. In the end, after the tremendous pressure and sobs of his own family, billionaire Jean Paul Getty agreed to pay. But not so easily, because he himself assumed the negotiation and convinced the criminals to settle for $2 million, money which he charged his son for, the father of the young kidnapped kid, making he pay him back in installments, like a loan, with interest of 4%. Everyone was surprised by the extreme stinginess of that man. Throughout his life he contracted marriage in 5 opportunities, and his wives, although married to one of the most affluent men on the planet, all walked away from Getty, as his greed showed them all away. He was also very strict and tough with his children. He once disinherited one of his firstborns, because he married someone the old man did not consider worthy of belonging to his family, Jean Paul, a renowned actress of the moment. When he died, his money had multiplied and his business prospered. But in spite of that, in life he never enjoyed beyond 5% of his assets, and all his efforts were reduced to ashes by this inevitable process called death.